Jupiter changing signs into Taurus. This happens on May 16th, and it goes from May 16th, 2023. So if you're listening to this at a later time, it goes all the way through till May 25th of 2024. So this is about sometimes it's like a 13-month cycle, 12-month cycle, something like that. And for those of you that are born with Jupiter and Taurus, this is your Jupiterian return. Know that we have a return with every planet and even the lunar nodes. So your Jupiter return, if you're born with Jupiter and Taurus, is going to give extra luck, extra benefit, extra opportunity to you, okay? And I'm going to go through house by house. So if you don't know which house is your Taurus house, or which houses, because I don't do whole sign houses, which houses are your Taurus houses, definitely you'll want to know that for understanding how this is going to impact you in a bigger way. But even if you don't know that, stay here, because we're going to talk all about Jupiter in Taurus. I'm going to go through other transits that are affecting this, that are going to be interacting with this Jupiter and Taurus. I'm going to talk about historically and the last few times that we've had Jupiter and Taurus. So the cool thing about knowing the astrology and getting older is that you start to see these cycles, and you start to recognize these cycles, and you start to feel at a visceral level what this transit has felt like for you in the past, and what you can typically expect, even though, because we have Uranus in Taurus, the unexpected is going to happen. It's going to be a very different experience than what we've had happen in the past, but there are still glimpses and things that you can latch onto that can give you good insight about the cycle of Jupiter and Taurus. So as I mentioned, it's about a 12-month cycle. We will have Jupiter retrograde during this time. We will have Jupiter touching upon other things in the sky in the astrology. And most importantly, that I want you to keep in mind, this is not a deep dive astrological reading. So one of the things that is so key to understand is that I can give you this overview of like what probably you might tend to feel if wherever your Taurus house is. The thing I want you to keep in mind is that it's so important for you to know what other planets, placements, astral bodies are in Taurus for you and aspecting your Taurus house, because that is going to be the real, thing to know about. The reason why I have the money symbol on the title of this is that Taurus is the money sign. It is most closely linked to your personal resources. And right now, the big talk for a lot of people is money. And there are so many other things that show your worthiness and your value and your inherent abundance. And I want you to keep that in mind, that yes, Taurus is about money. Let's get real. Like at a very basic security level, Taurus is our money. But don't close yourself in, because Taurus is also abundance and our values and our morals and what we have. And so regardless of how much money is in your bank account, you can still be a very abundant, rich, huge, value to the community, right? So I want you to really keep that in mind. And that's where a lot of people get it twisted. There's been a lot recently about, what is the saying? It's like your impact is directly correlated to your income. And we know that's not true. We know that there has been a lot of people historically that have made huge impacts, that their work wasn't known till much later, that they were far ahead of their time, or that they, shunned money. Someone like, I won't give examples, but big like thought leaders or big religious figures, I can think of a lot of people that had a huge impact and that didn't directly correlate with their income, but they were still very valuable, right? So when we're talking about this, I want you to keep in mind, it depends what planets, placements, and what aspects are being made or are made in your birth chart to this Jupiter in Taurus. Some of the things that Taurus represents are fertility, land, the earth, stability, our values, what we have, our materials. It can also be our physical body. So when we talk about Jupiter, who is about expansion, we can have, people gaining a lot of weight during this transit. So you want to see where this is happening, what other placements and planets are there, because it can be Jupiter, literally expansion. It can also be pregnancy. And actually the last transit of this, I had a very surprise pregnancy with my third child. So, and it can also be expanded love. It can, sticking to Taurus. Taurus is Venusian ruled. It's about luxury and love and comfort. And it's an earth sign. It's a fixed earth sign. So when we're thinking about Taurus and we're thinking about what it represents, we have to understand that it is the bull for a reason. It is fixed energy. It is very much about being stubborn and getting what you want, especially having to do with Venusian ruled things. Luxury, good clothes, good, an eye for aesthetics, good food. And hi, if you're just joining, someone says, my sister just found out she's pregnant. Yes, we aren't in this cycle yet. We start May 16th. However, she's going to be doing most of her growth, right? If she just found out she's pregnant during this Jupiter and Taurus transit. Okay. So that's Taurus. And then let's talk about Jupiter. Jupiter, as I said, has to do with, opportunity. So opportunity can be right in front of your face, but if you don't step into it, if you don't initiate into it, if you don't take that inspired action into it, it can go overlooked. So I really want that to be clear for this cycle, because Taurus does have to do with our creature comforts, and Jupiter does have to do with the material plane and opportunities. And so it's important to understand that you can have lots of opportunities come right under your nose and you don't necessarily take action on them or move forward on them, or you procrastinate on them, or you don't see your worthiness to move forward on them. So this is where it gets really important to know your individual chart and what kind of shadow work needs to be done around that Taurus house so that you can really expand this cycle. And that being said, my 2-hour deep dives are currently on sale through the link in my profile. They are a deep dive into not only your birth chart, but also the somatic work. It is like a deep dive coaching session with me where we go into your astrological chart, we go into the physical body and what wants to be integrated at this time so that you can have more success in your life, so that you can have more powerful, purposeful forward movement. Momentum. There's definitely some energy being stirred up. And this is in part because we've had the sun conjunct Uranus in Taurus, and we are moving into Jupiter in Taurus. So it's kind of like paving the way, getting our conscious awareness to this shift and this energetic shift. Okay. Now, one uncomfortable thing that I don't really want to talk about, but I have to talk about because it's been throughout history where we've seen this. Since Taurus has to do the land and Jupiter has to do with expansion, how does land expand? A lot of times it expands through volcanic activity, eruptions, earthquakes, volcanoes, those kind of things. And those aren't something that humans like, but overall, in the grand scheme of things, that is how land grows and expands. Okay. So it's really important to understand that if you live near somewhere that has volcanic activity or land activity, really have your emergency preparedness set and ready to go. And of course, just highest good. We always want to be in the energy of highest good for this land and myself. So I talked about Taurus. I talked about Jupiter. Jupiter, I have a whole other video on Jupiter. You can go search on my YouTube. If you are watching this on Instagram, but you have to pop off, it will be posted in full on my YouTube. So that's where I have a lot of the easier to find videos on each planet and things like that. So Jupiter is like the Santa Claus of the planets, and that energy of luck and benevolence and good things coming your way. And these opportunities do need to be acted upon. So I said that, and that's especially true with this transit, okay? So the last time that we had Jupiter in Taurus was June 4th, 2011. So 2011 until that same time frame of 2012. So June 4th, 2011, think about kind of where things were at for you, what you were up to 2012. And then for those of you who are old enough, we also had this in spring of 99 to spring of 2000. Okay, so think about what maybe was happening, conspiring for you then. Maybe you were born then. And then the last time before that was 88 to 89. So thinking about things that were happening during that time. I got the scar on my face, which you can't really see with this filter. I got the scar on my face during that transit in the 80s. Okay, so I was really expansive, riding a bike with no brakes. I was like, no one can stop me. So this is also where it comes in to think about where, if you are a fixed sign. So if you are, or you have you don't have a lot of Taurus necessarily, but you have a lot of Leo, Aquarius, this is creating a square to your planets or placement. So it's a whole different flavor than what I've been talking about for most people, right? And you have to be careful of not being like me in the 80s where I'm like, it doesn't have brakes. I don't care. I can fly. And then the world tells you you can't actually fly. So just to keep that in mind, if you have a lot of Leo or Aquarius, okay? And then same but different if you have a lot of Scorpio, okay? So that's opposing that. So you might have a lot of things come to the surface or have to deal with a lot of things that are polarities to that expansion and that abundance that you are meant to do that shadow work around to get to that abundance, okay? And I just want to say Scorpios and Scorpio placements have been going through it with the South Node in Scorpio. So please hear me that it is going to get better. However, the only way out is through, right? So there's just a lot coming up where get that extra support, get that extra community, whatever you need at this time, therapist, astrological session, doing the things that will help you during this time, because this is a very fruitful cycle for you. It's just going to have you confronting things that you don't want to confront. And it's somewhat of a continuation of the South Node energy in a whole different way, but because it's bringing you out of that South Node, but it's still uncomfortable, okay? And so as we're on talk of the South Node, I want to mention, so right now we have the North Node in Taurus, the South Node in Scorpio. And as we're moving forward, we are going to move into the summer and we're going to have the nodes changing sign. But until that happens, we have Jupiter is going to conjunct the North Node, and that's a very benefic, very amazing time. And that's where a lot of what's trying to come through and has been trying to come through for the last 16 months is going to be like, oh, I see now. I see, like, this is happening for me. I've been in a really, really intense place, and I'm starting to see what I gained from that and like where it's wanting me to go from there. So even though it's uncomfortable, and if you're not someone who journals, I highly recommend journaling. If you are someone who journals, keep journaling. If you don't already have your planetary planner, what are you doing? I have a whole page on Jupiter and Taurus, and then also Venus retrograde. They're available on sale because we're halfway almost through the year, on sale on my website. The link is in my profile. I can also add it to whatever I post this on. Okay, so we're going to have Venus retrograde this summer squaring Jupiter and Taurus. I'll talk about that in a minute, but it's going to be intense. And so journal, and look back to any journal entries that you have. I don't know if you keep a journal for that long, but if you did any type of writing around 2011, 2012, this was the last time that Jupiter was in Taurus. And as I say, this is going to be a whole different transit. And let's talk about why. So let's get into the transits. Little warning for those of you that weren't on in the very beginning. This is a time to be very aware of fertility. Also, fertility issues could be expanded upon, or like things could come up that society deems as safe that aren't necessarily safe for people that are pregnant, that kind of thing. Women and pregnancy, and Taurus is the womb. Taurus is the womb. If you look at a womb and you look at the bull's head, it's like the ovaries and the womb. It's very much a mirror for a reason. The womb space, the fertile womb space, is Taurus. And when we have Jupiter expanding on that, what just happened? That was weird. When we have Jupiter expanding on that, we want to look and see, I see my computer died. We want to look and see what maybe fertility things might be coming up for you. And also it can expand for society issues around women and the feminine and fertility, and maybe some issues with that might be kind of coming up, or lots of pregnancies. I don't know. I think about that time frame, the last time that this happened, and just the unexpected pregnancies can happen during this time. So use protection if you don't want to have a baby right now. And this will be true for the next year. Okay. If you do want to have a baby, all systems go. And that's all I'll say about fertility and babies. Okay, so let's talk about transits that will be happening the day after this transit happens. So the day after Jupiter moves into Taurus on May 17th, we have Pluto over there retrograding into Capricorn. And, that's going to happen. But at the 0 degree, we have Jupiter, and then we have Pluto retrograde. And they are creating a square in the sky. So look to where this is happening for you. That 0 to 1st degree of Taurus and that 0 to 1st degree of Aquarius, that's where the square is happening. Pluto is the lord of the underworld, uncomfortable material. And at this time, it can come up. It can create an issue for you. It can also be societally, that's not a word. In society, we see uncomfortable things coming up. And this has been happening. There's a lot of confusion about like what's actually true and what's actually real anymore. But there have been things coming up that have been like kind of shoved down is in terms of truth and things coming to the surface. At this time, we'll see something, conflict around Pluto themes. That can be power struggles, power grabs. That can be around sexuality as well. And in particular around women, because we have, hi, if you're just joining, we have Jupiter in Taurus, which is about the feminine. And then we have Pluto, which has to do with power and control and those kinds of things. So on May 17th, societally, we might see something come up. But for you individually, what is coming up around power themes in your life? What's coming up around money and power, and where you see a struggle with that? Now, we're going to move through this really quickly, but it's a really important thing to look at because it sets the tone for the whole next year. So May is a really important month astrologically, and that's why I'm offering my special sale. So check it out through the link in my profile. And then we move forward and we're chugging along here. Jupiter is going to conjunct the North Node. I already talked about that, so I'm not going to talk about that too much more. Then we have Venus retrograde this summer. Now, Venus is the ruler of Taurus. Venus has to do with money, value, are the things that we want and we desire, and the law of attraction. All of those things are very Venusian. And Venusian is, the frequency that we're vibrating at and how we're attracting things to us. So when we have a Venus retrograde over the summer, it's going to highlight any blocks or any issues that want to be worked out through your worthiness, through your heart. And how to do that is working with this Leo energy. So it's going to be in Leo. We're going to have Venus squaring Jupiter 3 times, June 11th, August 22nd, and September 17th. Because it's a retrograde, when we see those retrogrades happening, we often will see the power of 3. And the first time that it touches that and creates that square, a conflict will show itself. And then when it happens for the second time, you'll start to see, oh, I now know what that looks like and I'm going to work with it. And then the third time is the lesson learned, the integration. So it's a really powerful thing in astrology. We see the power of 3, and we want to definitely work with this energy. Hi, if you're just joining, let me know where Jupiter is natally for you and where Taurus is in your chart. If you know either of those or one of those, type in the chat. Let's see. So that's a really big deal. I'll have a whole other video about Venus retrograde in Leo. This did happen back in 2003. So the summer of 2003. So think back. I might be wrong. Actually, I'm totally wrong. Don't listen to me. I am getting that date wrong, and I can call myself out on that because I know that doesn't feel right. So let me look at that and I'll get back to you. Okay. Fifth house, someone says. Okay, that is really powerful to have that in your fifth house. Creative, expansion, abundance around all the things, luxury and fun. That's a wonderful placement for Jupiter to be. Okay, so then moving forward in June again, we have a sextile to Saturn in Pisces. Now, why this is important, Saturn in Pisces, we want to understand that Jupiter and Saturn they had a conjunction back in December 21st of 2020. Think about where you were December 21st, 2020. I know exactly where I was. I know exactly what I was feeling because I journal in my planetary planner, and then I can look back on it. So if you journal, look back to where you were at December 21st, around that time, 2020. That's at a 20-year cycle. It'll go all the way to 2040 because that was the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter. And so now we are at our first sextile. We'll have a sextile, we'll have a square, we'll have a trine, we'll have another sextile, we'll have an opposition. All these things will be happening with Saturn and Jupiter for the next 20 years. But I want to bring it up because this first sextile, it brings peace. It brings okay, I get the lesson. I have forgiveness. I'm moving forward. I'm opening my heart. I'm opening up to new possibilities. And this is really important to look at because Pisces is all about that. Pisces is all about letting go, release, and alchemy around that. And then we have Jupiter and Taurus, which is about now what will I create? Now what will I expand into? So really look at that. It's a really big thing to look at and to understand it within your chart. The other huge thing that will be happening next year, April 2024, which the astrology for next year, I looked at, I'm like, wow, we think this is big times. I'm looking ahead, we're going to have a crazy conjunction between Saturn and Neptune. We're going to have all these things that are I've never seen before. And one of them is Jupiter conjunct Uranus. So always kind of keep in mind, Uranus has to do with, it's an outer planet. It has to do with the larger picture here. It's not too close to you unless you have a lot of Uranian energy in your chart, which, you might. And if you do, then you'll feel this more personally. But Uranus is kind of like an out there planet. And Jupiter is a social planet. So when we think about Jupiter conjunct Uranus, both of these have to do with it's not super personal. It's more like what you're going to see in the society or what you're going to create and bring to society or your social group. So I always, with Jupiter, think about the group that you graduated with or the class that you were in. Typically, not always, you have the same Jupiter placement in the same sign as your class. Not always. There's going to be a shift, obviously. But for most people, you'll have the people you graduated with will all have Jupiter in Taurus if you were around that time. Because of that, it sets the tone for the social group. So you'll see a lot of things with a specific marker of Jupiter in Taurus people, or, Jupiter in Libra people, or Jupiter in Capricorn people. So it's just important to keep that context in mind, because it's not super personal necessarily, unless it's very personal in your specific birth chart. That's why it's so important to look at your own birth chart. But it has to do with sudden opportunities, sudden expansions. It can have to do with, like I talked about, the earth expanding and the issues that can come up when the earth expands. And so know that that's coming April 2024. We have a ways. We don't need to worry about it right now. But since this is a video for Jupiter and Taurus, it takes us all the way through. So I will bring it up. Okay, let's look at what some people are saying here. So Keith Sloan says, Jupiter in Leo. I love that placement. Maybe it's all my Leo that loves that placement. Jupiter in Leo, North Node in Taurus. Okay, look at what degree your North Node in Taurus is in. If it's at the beginning, you're in your nodal return. You probably know this. If it's at the end degrees, you're coming out of your nodal return. But this is a big time for you nonetheless. And when you have Jupiter going over that North Node, it's just going to expand and compound upon that. So it's a really exciting time to be alive. And yeah. Okay, Ashley says Jupiter in Aries. Ooh, that's fun. Jupiter in Aries. Okay, in the 10th house. Yeah, okay, that is really big. So is Jupiter in Aries in your 10th house natally, or is that where this transit will be happening, Ashley? Let me know. Okay, and then Madaka Namini. I don't know if I say it really quiet because I'm not confident. Jupiter first house? No. Taurus 10th house. Jupiter first house? Yeah. Taurus 10th house. Okay. Taurus 10th house is a really big time for you with your work and I think normal natal. Okay. So this is a really big time for you in your work, and things are going to be coming into expansion around your authority or your public persona. Yeah. And pay attention to that. Definitely take opportunities when they come up. Do not hesitate. And for this transit, just look where Taurus is. So where is Taurus in your chart? It's going to look like the glyph in the title of this video, the circle with the two horns, like the bull, and then just look and see where that is in your chart, and that will tell you. So for me personally, like it straddles two houses, 9th to 10th, and that's because I'm a late degrees Leo rising. So your rising sign and the degree to which your rising is in is based on the time you were born, and that casts the chart for your whole houses. And so looking to that is really important, the way that I practice astrology. So I did mention I'm going to get to each house by house, but before I do that, I want to talk about two different offers that I have going on right now. One is a sale on deep dive astrological somatic activation coaching sessions. They're 2-hour coaching sessions with me. We dive into it and we bring it up for integration. And these sessions are life-changing. I've had so many people come back and be like, that session we did 3 years ago changed the whole trajectory. And that is because not only is astrology powerful, but the somatic work and pairing those two together is, for me, where it's at, because we can get very heady with astrology and get very disconnected to what's happening in the body when we're talking about these astrological things. So we always want to bring it back to the felt sense. And that's why I say, as you get older, if you practice astrology or you're a fan of astrology and you pay attention to your chart, as you get older, you'll start to know, like, I know what Jupiter in Taurus feels like. I know what it feels like in my body. And so that's really a gift, because once you know that and once you start to feel into that, that's where the real manifestations can happen. That's where the real shifts can happen. And that's where the real success can happen. Regardless of what society deems as success, the success for you. Like I already know because this is 10th house, right? Most of the 10th house. It's very different energy than what society deems as successful. What I deem as successful is very different than what society does. So really look at that and understand that. And at the same time, it's a really exciting thing to know and to look at. So let's get to each house by house. Let me take a little sip. Okay, so when we look at this, we're looking at the house that it's in. So I like to do it this way. It's just a lot clearer to me. Just look for the little bowl on your chart, your circle chart, and see where it's at on the clock face of your chart. Is it in your first house? So let's start there. So if it is in your first house, you have Jupiter moving through your first house. If Taurus marks your first house in your rising sign, then you have Jupiter moving through here, expanding on this Taurus energy, okay? You already have Taurus energy in your identity, like how you show up, what you physically look like. And to have Jupiter there, it expands on this. Now, as I mentioned, this is probably the most important placement to make sure that you're not comfort eating, checking out and like distracting yourself and looking for ways to just kind of self-soothe at this time. Because first house is our physical body and our rising in particular is how other people see us. It has nothing to do with physical weight, but you can take on energy and you can kind of get more density and more weight. And I don't mean that like in your physical appearance. It can be psychically, it can be mentally, it can be all of those things. So it's really important if you have Taurus first house that you take care of your temple this year and that you really make a commitment to like lightness. It doesn't mean that you're starving yourself. It doesn't mean that you're, overworking yourself. It means that you're finding ways to bring in that light and break up that density when it starts to appear. And that you're not checking out or just stuffing things energetically, physically, all the ways. And this is a time for you to create. It's a fertility time. It is about your physical identity. This could be a placement where it is a very opportune time for you to get pregnant, to have a baby, or to birth something into the world. A book, whatever, a course, whatever that is. So the first house, having Taurus first house, and then having Jupiter move through it there is expanding on your identity and how people see you. And that might, depending on what other placements or what other aspects that's making to your chart, and that's why having an astrological reading at this time is so important, is going to impact that either in a difficult way, in a positive way, in a way that makes it easier to work with, in a way that makes it more difficult to work with. So look at your own chart and see what aspects this is making. Okay, if you have Taurus second house, so you're going to have Jupiter moving through your second house. This is the money house, baby. This is the house of your morals, your values, what you have, your bank account. It's your personal resources. This is not something that other people give to you necessarily. It's something that you create. You create the wealth. So someone that creates their own wealth or creates their own savings account. This is such a good time to have a savings account, by the way. So this is where it can get into the energetics, where you really want to be in the energetics of abundance, not looking for things to worry about. This is so important if you have this placement because it can go either way. You can, anything that you anything that you think about, pray about, worry about, it will expand this year. Specifically, it will be related to your money, to your value, to your worth. This is a time for you to dive into the self-worth and the manifestation work because it's all about value and how you value yourself. Whatever you focus on is going to expand, so make sure you're taking the time to focus on what you want and what you know you're ready and worthy of. So That was second house. If you have this happening in your third house is an interesting house to have this Jupiter and Taurus energy happening. You know, Taurus does have to do with the womb and the connection between our womb and our throat, and how our throat is connected to our heart and our worthiness. You know, that's all the Venusian things. And because of that, the third house is our communication. It's how we share information. It's how we relate to our siblings, how we relate to our closest people. And when you have Jupiter expanding on that, you're going to expand in your voice, in your, maybe the copy that you're writing, maybe it's in the way that you're speaking, maybe it's in the way that you're carrying yourself. There's going to be some shift and some expansion around that. And it's really important for you to, at this time, release all the old scripts and all the old ways that you knew you would have abundance by relating to people. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean money. When I say that, I mean, like, what is the way that you thought you had to interact with people that was going to give you, like, good job, honey, that kind of abundance, like the little breadcrumbs of approval. And at this time, you're going to be expanding into maybe an uncomfortable way of communicating or holding yourself that you haven't before. And so it's really important for you to trust that you can do this, that it's your time, and that people want to hear something different and something new coming out of you. And this is a great placement to tone, to chant, to have the energy move through your throat this year. So joining the choir that you want to join, or, you know, starting to go to sound healing where you can participate and om along. That's a really great thing for this placement, okay? So then we're moving into our fourth house. The fourth house is, you know, our roots. It's where we come from. It's our home environment. It is our bodies in a different way. The first house is kind of like how we appear. The fourth house is like how we feel in this temple. How do we feel here? And so there might be this expansion happening with Jupiter here around a remodel in your home. You might have where you're moving to a bigger home, or where something is happening at your home where, like, some expansion's happening in the foundation that's not so great, you know? So all around the home, and then you're also your physical body, how you feel in your home. So expansion around your sense of identity and your sense of feeling at home in your body. This is a great placement for doing the deeper work into, you know, your shadow work, integration, bringing pieces of yourself back home that you felt like you had to leave behind. This is a place and a time that's really important for you to kind of grab onto and make sure that you're taking the opportunities that you need to take. Also, with Jupiter transiting through the fourth house and this being Taurus's house, it might just be around decorating your home, or having, like, rearranging your home, or like making it more feng shui, making it more some way that feels good to you. This also can be taking on a new hobby around the home, like, you know, doing some kind of craft, or starting to, like, take care of plants, or planting a garden at home that's going to give you this sense of satiation around your home that you haven't had in a while. Okay, fifth house. The fifth house is Leo's house. It's ruled by the sun, and you really want to be aware that it is about play. It is about fun. And because Jupiter's here, you want to be aware of that and be cautious. I would say this is for all the placements, is that you want to be cautious about expanding into things that aren't necessarily healthy for you, but that feel really good. Venusian does have a shadow. It can be overindulgence. And so with it in your fifth house, you just want to be aware and careful about, like, is this really healthy, or am I just giving into what feels good and what I want to do? This is also a time for you to get into a hobby, or something that you like to do that maybe you've moved away from, to come back to it, or to bring in something entirely new. This can also be new love. This can be a new relationship coming in, or cautious. temptation around outside of your relationship. Venusian, like very like, ooh, I just want to do that. And I don't care about what's happening here, or being honest with what's happening here. So you do want to be aware of that. This is about your desires and your wants and like expanding into it, making sure that you're being in authenticity and integrity around what you want. So it is your time to shine. Just do it in a way that's respectful of others. Sixth house. Sixth house is your day-to-day routines. It has to do with what you're tending to. It is the house of service and how we first have to take care of ourselves so that we can serve others. And it has to do with our physical health, things like that. And so when we have Jupiter expanding on that, we want to make sure that our health and our well-being is at the top of our list, that we are taking on new habits and new routines that make us feel really good. And one thing about this is opening to receiving on the daily, because Jupiter has to do with receiving, Jupiter has to do with expansion and good luck and opportunities. It's likely that you'll have these little daily opportunities to receive that can go overlooked. And so the practice is in opening and saying yes when someone wants to buy you a coffee, when someone wants to open the door for you, really receiving those things, and that those little things add up to big things. So that is the energy with this Jupiter in the sixth house. Yeah, I would say that the three places that we're looking at in terms of like your physical body is the first, fourth, and sixth. And this is another one where it's just important to tend to the body and make that a priority. And then also be aware of not overindulgence. And then the other thing with this house is it does rule our pets, like dogs, cats, for my daughter, rats, like little pets, and tending to them. And this can be a time where you want to make sure you're not overfeeding your pets, and that you're making sure that you're taking care of their health as well. So that's just like a little side note for you pet lovers. Okay, seventh house. So if you have Jupiter moving through your seventh house is partnership. It's marriage. It can also be business partnerships. So this is opportunities around that. This is a really great placement because Taurus is Venusian on its own. And so you might have a lot of opportunities to expand into partnership, opportunities to expand your business into a partnership if you've been working by yourself, or if you have been in partnership with somebody. This is benevolence and luck to that partnership. So it's a really great time to allow for, your partner to manifest things. When we look at the seventh house, we can see things in the seventh house that aren't actually for that person. The person that they're in partnership with is bringing things in. So it can be a time, it's really kind of a time for you to, now depending on what else is happening in your chart, a time for you to lean back, kind of like with the receiving, but a little bit more about allowing your partner to be the big personality, or allowing someone else close to you that is manifesting for the both of you, right? And making sure that you're not, I didn't talk about boundaries with Taurus, but that's a really big theme that I can't believe I kind of forgot to talk about. But this is especially true of the seventh house, making sure that you're respecting your own boundaries, that your partner's respecting your boundaries as well. And as long as that's intact, just let your partner manifest for you this year. Let your partner bring things to you this year. And this might even just be your business partnership. The seventh house is anything you're in contract with. So, in marriage, you sign something, right? When you move into a new house, you typically sign something, right? When you have a job, a lot of times you sign something. So it's anything that you're in contractual relationship with, and how that can benefit you this year. Abundance, maybe new contracts coming in, new things coming in, your partner manifests, this new house for you or something, right? Like, just stay open. The sky's the limit, right? Okay. So now we're moving to the eighth house. If you have Taurus as your eighth house, you're going to have Jupiter moving through there. Now, I didn't really talk about this, but if you have Taurus straddling 2 houses, you're just going to want to look at like how much of that house is Taurus and know that it will at some point graduate into the next sign. No, not the next sign, the next house. And so you can listen for both houses. Or what I do a lot of the time is like, I'll go back and listen to myself and then, listen to it once that time frame comes. So like I look at my chart regularly and I see, okay, that's happened. Let me go back and find now where I talked about that. Does that make sense? Okay. So 8th house, Jupiter in the 8th house can expand upon the magic. It can expand upon secrets too. It can expand upon like intimacy and alchemy and connection and that juicy love. Now, as I mentioned for the 5th house, you want to be respectful. So if you are in a relationship and all of a sudden there's this passionate opportunity outside of your relationship, hold your authenticity and hold your integrity in that relationship, because you might have opportunities coming in that aren't necessarily completely healthy and aren't necessarily in highest good for you. So use restraint around that. However, 8th house also does have to do with money and also has to do with other people's money. It's different than the 7th house. The 8th house is inheritances, tax, money. It can be just like people giving you money. So from like your business, it's not necessarily always earned, but it's always given, if that makes sense. So when we're thinking about this 8th house and Jupiter moving through here, it's expanding on that. You might get an inheritance. You might get a handout. You might get something that is like lifting you up to the next level. And that's really exciting. But just as careful as the opposite. It can be overindulgence and losing money that way. It can be specifically losing other people's money that they want back. So just be aware of that. 8th house is a tricky one. However, it also does have to do with the occult. It could be a year for you to come into more of your magic. If you're wanting to study that, if you're wanting to like practice that, if you're wanting to get into more of your like witchy or wizardy self, this is the year for it. It's going to be a really magical year. And just again, like with all of these houses, stay in integrity, stay in authenticity, and check yourself when it's like you're wanting to do something or expand into something. Just check to see where it's coming from. Is it coming from ego? Is it coming from like a soul-driven place? That's that. Okay. 9th house, having Jupiter move through your 9th house has to do with expansion, higher education, foreign travel, anything that is expanding you. It is Jupiter's house. So to have Jupiter placed within Jupiter's house is a huge blessing and has to do with just opportunities abound. Now, if you're someone who has this, that doesn't always necessarily feel this, you do want to look at aspects, planetary rulers, that kind of thing. But in general, this is a really benefic place to have Jupiter moving through and to have Jupiter natally. So because we're talking about Taurus, which is about land, and then we're talking about the 9th house, which is about foreign land, you really want to pay attention to opportunities, places for expansion around foreign lands. So opportunities might be coming in around that. You want to pay attention and also use caution, because since this is naturally a placement of Jupiter, like this is Jupiter's house, it can get really big really quick. And we know with any kind of expansion or any kind of a lot of energy coming at you, you have to be able to hold it, right? So that being able to hold it has to do with your nervous system, which goes down into the 3rd house. And we want to look at what's happening there because that's Scorpio for you. So learning how to hold more. And this is a lot of the work that we do in the somatic activation work that I do. And so, as I mentioned earlier, those readings, those 2-hour sessions with me are on sale right now through the link in my profile until I think Monday. I think that's what I said. I'm not entirely sure. It says on there. But definitely check that out because this is a good placement for that because, oh my gosh, ooh, that's fun. Let's go there. I don't know why it got dark though. Sometimes happens. Okay. So yeah, I want to make sure that I covered everything. So this is time for you to go out and get it. And it might be across a pond. It might be across some water. It might be in a different country. And it might even be that you go somewhere and that's what expands you. I have this happen all the time, right? Like I go somewhere, I don't know why I'm drawn to that place. And then I find out, right? Because it expands you. It makes you bigger. It makes you be able to hold more. And that is kind of the energy of this 9th house. So looking at Jupiter moving through here is about anything that's going to make you be able to get bigger, hold more, and become a bigger version of yourself. The 9th house is also about higher education. So you might want to go back to school, but not a great time for that. But you might want to. It could be a good time for that. I don't know. Or teaching, taking up teaching, like learning how to teach better, or making a new course, or becoming a student. So those two, because we learn in both situations and we're expanded in both situations, right? Okay, that's enough. 10th house. If you're just joining, let me know if you know where your Taurus house is. We are talking about Taurus, and we are talking about Jupiter moving through Taurus. And now we're on to the houses, and we're talking about the 10th house in astrology. If you missed the beginning of this, I will repost it so you'll be able to go in, and maybe I'll even timestamp it. Who knows? 10th house has to do with your public persona, your authority, the way that like people see you. It's different than the first house and than the rising sign, because it's like people see you in your full glory. Like when you're doing your thing, this is how people see you. And so because of that, when we have Jupiter moving through that place, it's going to expand on that. It's going to expand on opportunities around your work, your career, how people see you. And when that happens, it's going to be up to you how far you take that and how much you can hold again with that. And it's really important to understand that this is an earth house and this is an earth sign, Taurus. So having those two matched up is great and is a blessing. However, this can also mean that you're stubborn and you overwork yourself. And so it's really important when Jupiter moves through here to let things be easy. Like, what's easy right now? What is the easiest way for you to do the thing that you do? What is an easier way for you to make money? Like, make it easy. And if you can't do that, then you really need to check yourself, because you're going to overwork yourself this transit. And so it's really important for you to not do that. Learn some new tools, learn how to take it a little bit easier. And this is really about like allowing, Taurus is Venus ruled, allowing your worthiness to get bigger and allowing yourself to kind of at a deeper, like cellular level, understand that when you're overworking something or you're overworking yourself, it's not magnetic. It's just not. So this is a time for you to lean back in that and allow the opportunities to come in. And it's not to say that you're not supposed to work, because you are. It's just about really checking yourself when you're wanting to overwork. And that being said, like, it's a good money time. Like, money's going to be coming in, but in the long run, it doesn't matter how much money you make if you're exhausting yourself and you're not happy, right? So making sure that you're checking that. Okay, now we're moving on to the 11th house. So we're talking about Jupiter. We're talking about Jupiter and Taurus moving through your 11th house. And this is a really huge time for you if you have, so look at it this way. Everyone goes through seasons in life. And if you're in a season where Jupiter is below the horizon, so 1st to 6th house, it's inner expansion work. It's like the hibernation, but like the inner expansion that happens there. If it's above the horizon, it's seen in the light of day. So know that we all, because Jupiter moves through each one of the houses and it moves through each one of the zodiac signs, we're all in a different season around this. And so just honor the season that you're in. If you are in the 11th house season, this is future goals, visions, This is society. This is community. This is how you interact with community. It also has to do with gains. And so you have gone through the inner expansion work, and now you're meant to bring it to the community. You're meant to bring it to society. 11th house is also social media. So let it fly. Like, go at it. This is the time for you to just like put it to work, put it out there. And with that being said, network. Like, that whole thing, your net worth is your network. Like, that's real. Like, who are you talking to? Who are you associating with? What groups are you a part of? And this is a year for you to really open up to that. Open up to the expansion around your community and different pathways to connecting with people. And because this is very Venusian paired with that future, what do you want? Like, what is it? What is the strongest mental, spiritual, physical picture you can hold around what you want that is in service to others and to yourself, and not betraying yourself to become in service to others, and not to show up, like the whole like social media, like not showing up a certain way because you think it's going to make you successful, like actually showing up the way that you want to show up and watching things grow from there. Taurus is in my 11th house and my sun sign and Venus overlaps into Aries. I love this. Thank you for sharing. This is my favorite thing, is like when we can just like, let's just chat it up here. And I am not like an introductory astrologer. I'm not. I never wanted to be that. I had an interview with Astrology.com like years ago, like in 2018. And I just don't do surface astrology. I don't do beginner astrology. It's like, I'm here for the people who want to work their chart. So if you want to work your chart, you're in the right place. If you don't want to work your chart, you're in the wrong place. Okay. 12th house. My daughter has this, and she's a Taurus rising. So it's mostly her 12th house into her first. So, looking again at like how much of a sign it's in, how much of a house it's in, and if you have this transiting your 12th house, the 12th house is the unseen. Even though it is above the horizon line, it's a spiritual house. It's the house of you and God. So even though it's not you working like in the darkness necessarily, it's not like you working on yourself. It's like how the work that you've done on yourself and then bringing that to God, or God bringing that to you, or Goddess bringing that to you. It is it's a direct line to God. And when I say that, we all have it. It's not that any of us are lacking that. What I'm saying is that in particular, when a planet like Jupiter is moving through that house, you're going to get it. You're going to feel it. You're going to hear it. You're going to know it. You're going to feel connected in a way that you haven't felt. And with this transit, it's important to trust yourself and trust that inner knowing. And because it is Venusian, it has to do with our worth and our value. It's like, do I believe I'm worthy enough to have a direct line to God? Have I been programmed to believe that I can only have a connection to God through this guru or this priest or this place or this situation? And that all gets shaken up when Jupiter is transiting through here. Jupiter expands you in ways that can't be questioned anymore in your physical body. So having come to Jesus moments, come to God moments, come to Goddess moments, having situations or experiences that are unexplainable, that are divinely guided, synchronicities, things lining up. It can also be, unfortunately, 12th house can also be situations that you're in that force you to God. If you're not listening, if you can't listen, that's why it rules hospitals, prisons, and institutions, because sometimes there are those times in life where we need to be put into situations where we have to know God to survive. And so if you have this transit, don't get worried, don't get scared. It can be, I have 12th house placements. I worked in a hospital. It wasn't that I was a patient. I just felt like I was stuck working in a hospital. It's like, it can be these situations, and that's where, you know, it's really interesting. Yeah, like that's why I'm here. Like that's what brought me here, you know? So it's like things this year might not make sense to you, but they lead you to where you're meant to be with Goddess, with God, with that connection to source. The 12th house is like the spiritual lubrication house. It's like, it gets you like all lubed up so that you can have that direct line to God, and you can feel and know and be in the same energy and hear what needs to be heard. That being said, Jupiter in the 12th house, you want to be cautious and aware of not just jumping head first into the unknown in situations that have to do with a spiritual connection, a religious affiliation. This is especially true because of Saturn in Pisces, and it will sextile this. So you might have like a great example, and there's nothing wrong with the Kundalini awakening. A great example is having a Kundalini awakening and getting a divorce, leaving your job, leaving your kids, and then a year later being like, what the fuck did I just do? Like, yes, the Kundalini awakening was great and wonderful, but did I have to like crash and burn everything else in my life? So you don't want to be like that. Don't leave your kids. So sometimes those awakenings or those sudden ahas or those sudden like connections with God can feel jarring and disruptive to your life. And so you want to balance that and make sure you're not just like going full force in one direction without having it tempered with that earthly material consciousness, that like awareness of like, I still need to do these things. I still need to show up in this way. I do have responsibilities. I do have things that I need to do. And overall, if you have Jupiter moving through your 12th house, it's just going to be, it's the sunrise place. It's going to be this different way. And so open to that and enjoy that. Just don't do anything stupid with that.